Hello everyone, this is Barbara Depta, creator of Resync products, and I have today a pleasure and honor to host John Travis from NSF International. Before John introduces himself more in depth, I want to make sure that you understand that the purpose of this video is to share with you and educate you as a listener and consumer of healthy, hopefully, products and potential or current consumer of supplements, what and why you should be looking at when you're purchasing any supplements. And it doesn't matter if it's a GNC, any nutrition store, any Whole Foods or Publix, regardless where it is, it really matters that you take a look into certain third-party certifications that majority, unfortunately, of the supplements do not contain. So without saying anything else, John, please give us a short explanation of who you are and why we should trust what you say. What has been your experience in the field of testing supplements?
Thanks, Barbara. Very kind. Again, my name is John Travis. I'm a senior research scientist here at NSF. I've been at NSF 22 years now, coming up on 23 years. I've been involved with testing supplements since we first started doing our NSF ANSI 173 standard back in 2001. I was involved in the creation of the standard. And again, I was still around, obviously, in 2004 and was involved in the creation of NSF 306, which is the Certified for Sport program.
Yeah, so there are exactly different certifications that your company offers, correct? Could you get a little bit into more detail what it really means to a certified product and what different certifications program you guys offer?
Right, so a little bit about certification in general. Certification is usually done by an independent third party and our role is to assess products against a standard. So in the case of dietary supplements, we have a quality standard, which is 173, that entails testing for just general label claims and contaminants with regards to dietary supplements. So we'll examine the product label to ensure that it is in line with the current U.S. federal regulations. We will test the product to make sure what's on the labels and what's in the bottle. And we'll also look and test to make sure it doesn't have other contaminants in there that will impact human health. Like, for instance, we'll test to make sure it does not contain E. coli, staph, salmonella. We'll also look to make sure it does not contain toxic metals like lead, mercury, and arsenic. And we will review the health claims also to make sure they comply with the federal regulations as well. So for instance, you can have structure function claims and health claims on there. We'll review those claims to make sure that they're comply with the regulations so the consumer knows what they're getting.
So, in our previous conversation, I mentioned to you that after advertising our product on social media, I'm becoming very familiar with strange statements that I haven't seen before, like somebody say that they are using pharmaceutically graded supplements. Can you tell us what is the difference and if even such a thing exists, and what should we even think about when we read a statement of that nature?
In my mind, there is no regulatory term pharmaceutical grade within the supplements world, and even within the pharmaceutical industry has their own set of standards to which they must adhere to, and the supplement industry does as well. And those are actually mandated by what's known as the good manufacturing practices. They mandate what a manufacturer, a retailer, a distributor has to do to deliver a safe and quality product to the consumer.
Understood. So there is not just something like GMP manufacturing that differentiate your third-party testing, but there are also additional qualities that you bring to the picture.
That's correct. Correct. So as part of our NSF 173, if a product becomes certified, we also inspect and audit facilities to ensure that they're complying with the good manufacturing practices as set forth by the FDA. So we go and assess companies twice a year for that. So, and like I said, it's not just the manufacturer's responsibility. There are also GMPs that cover the retailer, cover the brand owner, and cover distributors as well, because all three or all four parties play a role in supplement quality and safety.
John, I want to make sure that people who are listening, they understand that the supplements can actually be infected during a shipping time, right? Or they could be affected with some banned substances during the creation. So people should be really paying attention to what happens to them and if they were tested after creating them.
Correct. So testing is a way to verify that the product has been manufactured in a quality fashion. So by that, I'm saying you can follow the GMPs, but unless you follow that up with some kind of testing, in our case, it's product certification, to verify that you follow those GMPs, and so the product was manufactured in a safe, quality manner. Because no matter what, there are a lot of times everyone has good intentions, but something happens at a point in time where a product can become infected. For instance, they had the issue with the compounding pharmacies being contaminated with the meningitis bacteria that caused many deaths and illnesses throughout the United States. So that was unintentional. Wow. Yeah, it's debatable whether it was unintentional. Let the courts decide that, but you know what I'm saying. So unless you're verifying through testing what you've set forth with your GMPs and your procedures in your facility, there's no way to know whether the product is safe or it's manufactured in a quality fashion.
You know, I've done, of course, my research, and I know that your corporation has done probably way more extensive than I do. But I know that number one, majority of supplements on the market are not actually tested and certified by any third party, correct?
Yes, you are correct there. I mean, so CRN estimates anywhere between 55 and 70,000 different SKUs on the marketplace within the United States for dietary supplements. That's a tremendous number. And if you look at our listings, it's a very small percentage of that.
So what do you mean by that? Can you explain for people who are not familiar with those terms?
So I'm not super familiar with SKU. So what they mean by SKU is brands and products to those brands. It could be different sizes. So but it's still a large number. It's every permutation of brand, product, and size of product on the marketplace. So that's a tremendous number of products out there. And if you look at our listings, we and other certifiers as well, if you were to add all of us up, it's a small percentage of products that are in the marketplace.
Sure. Do you know, I truly believe, John, that it's not just maybe the price and the time that companies like mine need to put into getting certification of this nature, but it's lack of knowledge that people of general population, that they don't know that supplements should be actually tested, or maybe they assume that they are tested.
Yeah, I think I've spoken with consumers in the past, like my family, who we use dietary supplements, and until we started doing our certification program, and I told them about what we were doing, they had no idea. They thought because it was on the shelf that the FDA had tested or inspected. Well, I informed them, well, the FDA will inspect facilities, but none of the products are required to be tested by the FDA before they on the shelf. So within the regulations, the GMP rule requires that supplement manufacturers verify the identity, purity, strength, and potency of the raw materials or their ingredients they put in their products when they come in the door, and B, to ensure that the correct amounts are in the finished product when they sell the product. So testing on both ends to verify the ingredients when they come in the door, and also testing to verify that, yeah, this product meets its label claims.
Yeah, that's so important because, you know, again, there was a case of GNC not such a long time ago that they were really sued with a massive amount of money by having products that 75% of them, I believe, didn't have inside of the containers what they said that what the label was stating, right?
Yes, the New York Attorney General pulled products from 5 different retailers, and had them tested, some like St. John's wort, ginkgo, things like that, and they reported that many of them did not contain the ingredients that they purported to contain by the test method that they were using. There's some arguments about whether the test methods were the most appropriate for the materials for which they were screening, but there's no denying that, yes, you could probably pull them products off the shelf in the marketplace, and many of them will be adulterated or not meet label claim, especially if they haven't been tested or verified by a third party.
Sure. And you know what? I didn't know of a testing of this nature until I started to work with professional athletes, and they're being held accountable, of course, to the highest level. And your company, NSF Sport, is so far the only one exactly that is being accepted by professional leagues. So on that token, let's just briefly speak who actually is responsible for a different banned substances that are on the different leagues list. And I think that each of them has a different banned substances that they actually allow the athletes to take or not, correct?
Well, to a certain degree, Barbara, you're correct there. I think that in the United States, where we have unionized professional leagues, it's a little bit different than other locales or even within the United States. For instance, Major League Baseball, National Football League, and National Hockey League are all unionized sports. So they have a collective bargaining agreement in which, or during which the bargaining, as part of the negotiating of that agreement as to what substances are prohibited for use in competition. So that's part of collectively bargained. Whereas with, let's say, USA Track and Field, USA Triathlon, those athletes are more independent contractors, so their overseeing body relies on the WADA prohibited list and the WADA code as far as prohibited list and what they can use and what they can't use. So there's a little bit of difference there. I've noticed since 2004, since we began doing Certified for Sport, that the lists they've converged and become much more harmonized than they were in the past. They were significantly different back then, but if you look at them today, they're freely available online if you just search for the collective bargaining agreements for the pro sports teams, and you compare them to the WADA list, they're very similar. And I think each of them has this caveat phrase at the end of the substances and related substances with similar pharmacological or structural activity. Well, that really covers a lot of different things. So, and to be honest with you, there aren't a lot of testing labs that are doing the anti-doping testing as far as for the athletes themselves. Mm-hmm. And they do the same tests for the track athletes as they do for the baseball athletes, as they do for the NFL athletes. The results returned are within the scope of what those leagues require, but it's the same testing techniques.
And I hope that we can touch a little bit about this subject, because we know that there are indigenously, naturally occurring banned substances in vegetables and fruits and foods that we eat on a daily basis. But sometimes we don't know of them until company like yours, any third-party testing company that's out there, there's very few selective. We've learned, we have learned that actually do very specific, precise testing that could find even indigenously banned substances that might be on those lists that you were just mentioning, but never been found before because the tests were just not ever run, right? Correctly.
Correct. I mean, if you think about it, and just a little thought experiment here, we are eating these foods that come from plants, and we also have animal-based foods that we eat on a daily basis: eggs, milk, beef, chicken. These are living creatures, living organisms that some of these prohibited substances, for instance, we know cattle and all mammals produce testosterone. We know that androstenedione is passed on in the milk of lactating cows. Granted, it's concentrations are very low, but that's a prohibited substance, and yet it's in everyday milk that we consume, but the levels are so low. So it's really a matter of the dose in those respects.
John, that's a valid point, because even look at whey protein, right?
Correct.
It's
Whey
another
protein,
example.
it's been known to have, so an interesting story with whey protein. We initially were certifying, well, initially we had a test method for whey protein, and we never detected a particular steroid, progesterone, within whey protein. Then after a few years of testing, a rash of adverse findings where we detected progesterone in whey protein was occurring. We didn't know what was going on. So we consulted with the brand owners, and then who consulted with the whey protein manufacturers, and what we had determined and what we were able to uncover is they had modified or changed their extraction procedures for the whey protein, and that procedure allowed more of the small molecules like progesterone to come through ultrafiltration. That's a tongue twister. Ultrafiltration unit, and ended up in the finished product. Now the levels in there were insignificant in that they were not going to impact human health, and they were not going to impact drug tested populations, but they were there and we were picking them up. So FDA has authority over foods, drugs, and cosmetics, but we'll just leave it to the foods and drugs. And within that, dietary supplements are considered a subclass of food within a regulation. So if you were to put a scale, drugs are highly regulated.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, drugs are a substance that are designed to react with receptor targets within humans, and they're designed to have an effect, whether it's to alleviate asthma or is to knock down the HIV virus. So they have intended desired effects, and they know that these drugs at higher doses are toxic to people just because they'll shut complete systems down. So those are high risk, they're highly regulated. Next on the regulation, I would say, is dietary supplements, in that FDA requires good manufacturing practices similar to food, but the FDA also requires supplement manufacturers to verify incoming raw ingredients as far as the purity, content, and potency, and also to verify the quality of their finished product after they manufacture. Whereas foods, there's no requirements for that. You just need to produce your food in a GMP compliant facility and have your hazard control plan to ensure that your food is going to be manufactured in a safe manner. There's no testing that's required to verify that.
And that's scary. That's really scary. And I haven't learned that until my former director of research told me. She said, what I have seen in many food manufacturers blew my mind. And she goes, in a lot of supplement manufacturers that she went to, she goes, you could literally move your finger and lick it probably and not get any, sickness or any disease out of it. So that spoke really volume to me when she made that clear comparison.
Yeah, and the food manufacturers, really, they should, within a hazard control plan, they should be doing at a minimum microbiological screening, looking for contamination of that nature, because in reality, that is the most common cause of foodborne illness, is contamination with a microbiological agent, whether it's Salmonella, E. coli, or Staph.
Yeah, that's really concerning. And I'm glad we are making those comparisons, even few, very selective, but strong enough to give the contrast to people who are, some of them, so against supplements, thinking that they're very unclean. And we cannot disagree, because we know how many bad substances with fillers are out there. But that's why we're having this video and this conversation between the two of us, to educate people what they should be looking for. So I will make sure that in the end of the video, John, I will be saying and showing exactly the steps of the certification,
Okay.
how NSF reports look like, so people can really become more familiar. of what to look for when they're purchasing the product in itself. And I want to give an example how specific you guys are, because recently you created a few new substances that are on the banned substance list. And one of them is like something simple that people consume all the time, green coffee bean extract, right? Which they're saying that is the alternative to a coffee and it's so healthy. Tell me, John, why did you guys decide to ban that?
So we found that coffee bean extract in the market as a raw material was heavily adulterated, and the majority of the raw materials that were alleged to be green coffee bean were not green coffee bean. They were something else. And it's similar there to a few years ago when Hoodia Gordonii was hot in the marketplace for like a weight loss product or weight loss ingredient. It was estimated at that point in time, and I think green coffee is very similar to that. Around 90% of that raw ingredient that was in the marketplace was adulterated with something else. I mean, they went so far, some of them were even just plain sawdust with some other thing thrown in there. We never were able to determine out what the other thing is. We were able to determine, one of my colleagues was that, yeah, it was sawdust.
What could be another example of very obvious ingredient that you see on the market all the time and you know that they are not being checked or certified?
Oh, so probably, I mean, ginkgo biloba is one of the most adulterated ingredients in the marketplace. It's a high priced ingredient, and it's just very prone to where someone can dilute it with a small amount of an adulterant to improve their yield of ginkgo, and it can move their price point and their margin by huge amounts. And so there's an economic incentive for some people that really don't have no scruples to do that.
That's really surprising because you hear people constantly taking it for their brain function all the time.
Yeah. It's a wonder that people continue to take it with it being as adulterated as it is, because being an adulterated product is usually adulterated for a reason, and it's not to improve its effect. Usually in cases like economic adulteration is to improve the bottom line of the party that's doing said adulteration. So in my mind, it would reduce the effectiveness and then reduce repeat sales for that product. So you're on a marketplace that isn't labeled properly, isn't meeting its label claim, so it's likely not providing the benefits to the consumer.
You know, it's just so sad because there's so many companies making hundreds of millions of dollars on consumers who are unfortunately uneducated and maybe unaware, trustworthy. Simply that exactly what's on the shelf probably was checked and was tested by a third company. Last question, John. Is there any more or less prevalence of adulterated products when they are in a form of a pill, liquid, or a powder? Do you see any significance in being in between those three?
I don't think we've been able to correlate any kind of prevalence based upon the product form. I mean, there are a lot more liquids, or there are a lot more tablets and capsules on the marketplace. So I think the percentage of each of them the percentage of adulteration is each of them. I think it's more of an ingredient specific kind of thing as far as adulteration. So the FDA puts out bulletins. There are some classes of supplements, and by classes I mean what their intent is for the consumer. So weight loss products, sexual enhancement products, and then what FDA has termed bodybuilding products. Those are the most rife with adulteration with active pharmaceutical ingredients. So for instance, the sexual enhancements products with the different Viagra knockoffs or Viagra itself in those. The weight loss products with different stimulants like sibutramine, which was trade name for, well, sibutramine is a common name, but the trade name was Meridia. It was a derivative of amphetamine that was developed for weight loss for extremely obese people, but they pulled off the market due to an elevated risk for cardiac events like stroke and heart attack. but that's finding its way into different products. We are also seeing more designer stimulants, and for what we're testing too. My research colleagues and I, Dr. Peter Cohen, Dr. Bastian Venwees, and I just published, in fact, it was last week, we looked at an ingredient called 2-amino-isoheptane. We started seeing it on the marketplace. And so we purchased some products with that ingredient in there. We tested them. And so it was a very small survey. It was 6 products, but that's all we could find on the marketplace last year. 5 of them didn't have what they were labeled to have in there. Only 1 of them had the ingredient. Well, the ingredient's really not a legitimate dietary ingredient anyway. So we did some further work, and we found in one of the products, we found 1,3-DMBA, which has been banned by the FDA. 2 of the other products, we found 1,3-DMAA, and that's the DMAA that was the geranium oil. We found that, and that's been prohibited by the FDA. And keep in mind, it wasn't labeled to be in the product either. So the consumer who was purchasing those products would not even know they were consuming it. And then there was a 4th ingredient in 2 of the other products that it's called, we're going to call it, in the paper we called it 1,4-DMAA. It's a chemical cousin to DMAA, and that wasn't on the label either. So we have 2 banned ingredients and 2 new ingredients that are in these products as stimulants, and there's really not a lot of safety data. There's a little bit for octadrene for the 2-amino-isoheptane, but it's very limited, and it's not really a dietary ingredient anyway. But there's no safety data for the other 3 at all, and they're being placed in products for people to consume, and people are unaware that they're even consuming them.
You know, it's concerning, but in the meantime, it's really uplifting to me to see that companies like NSF International is really looking after those things to protect customers from any additional harm, and really try to protect and deliver the highest quality of a safety. You know what I truly believe we should also maybe emphasize, John, here? A lot of cardiovascular doctors prescribed, you know, the organic stated or made with organic ingredients supplements, or fruit and vegetables just supplements again, but they're not tested. That is the same challenge, isn't it?
Yes, it's the same challenge. I mean, we don't know all the secondary metabolites that plants produce. So there could be low levels of substances, whether they're going to have an adverse human health effect is unknown at this point in time. But when you create an extract, so when you take that plant, let's say you take a beet and you extract out and remove the things that the fibers and things like that, where you were looking for just the secondary plant metabolites, and you concentrate it down, you can get within a small dose capsule a large amount of these secondary metabolites that you wouldn't normally get. It would take you 10 or 15 beetroots to eat to get what would be in 1 capsule. So you're really concentrating it down. So you really have to test, and you really have to look to see what is in those products.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I made a comment about that on one of my recent videos that hasn't been posted yet. It's being edited. I've made a comment that how much people would have to eat the aronia fruit or red spinach in order to actually get the value of the anthocyanin percentage, standardized percentage that we offer per serving. And that amount is crazy. Around 300 pounds of aronia berry.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's astonishing.
And I spoke with, the company that is making it, and I couldn't believe it by myself. My answer was WOW. I'm like, are you serious? They were like, yeah. So when we think of that and the process that those fruits or vegetables or any ingredients that are in the supplements, I just want to urge people and the listeners that are, listening to us right now, please pay attention. Check. Yeah. Take a look, go around the product. If it's a box, bottle, whatever the form of the product is, check if it was tested by a third party company. And I mean, I might not be familiar even with all, John, so correct me. And you may not be familiar with all of your competitors, but you guys are being perceived as the number one testing third-party company, NSF Sport, and there are different divisions as we briefly described.
Yes.
Then I am aware of BSCG as my product were tested by them. And then is there LGC and Informed Sport? Are those two different companies or is it a one company?
They're one company now. So LGC purchased HFL Informed Sport a few years ago. So now it's just LGC Sport, I believe, is what it's called.
So that's what I am just aware of. Are there any other companies?
None other. There's an outfit, the Cologne Lab, which is doing testing, but that's in Europe.
Okay.
So just within the United States, those are the three main players. The other two competitors. But one thing that we offer that they don't offer is we do the certified for sports, so we do the testing of the substances that are prohibited by athletes to use in sport.
Mm-hmm.
Competitors do that as well. We also offer the label claim testing and the good manufacturing practices audit and inspections as well. So we're all encompassing. We touch on all of the key points of supplement safety and quality, whereas I believe our competitors do not touch on all of them like that.
One of my questions when I see marks as, and more of an educated person when it comes to this supplements industry and creator right now, I think people would like to know what USDA stands for when there is that, little circle, and if that's good enough for safety purpose.
Can you just repeat what you said, Barbara?
USDA, there is like a,
Oh,
mark
that,
on a lot of supplements that we see in a regular, health stores.
does it say USDA organic or just USDA?
Sometimes USDA, sometimes USDA organic. Where's the difference between those two, and how does it apply? And what is the maybe quality difference between that versus NSF International?
So the USDA organic is the USDA Organics program that's run by, well, it's the standard was developed by them. There are many certifiers that certify to the USDA Organic standard, so they're allowed to put that on there. That's different than what we're doing here. They're organic standards, and I'm not super familiar with how those work. So I'm probably not the best person to comment on them. I just know that they have to follow those kinds of criteria set forth within that. Just plain USDA without anything else, I think, is kind of a meaningless mark that they put on their bottles, because the USDA really doesn't do any testing for supplements at all, nor do they maintain any kind of quality program for supplements.
Okay.
The funny thing is, if I one of my former colleagues that used to work here at NSF has some presentation slides, and he has a total, I think, before he left, 4 or 5 slides where is an incomprehensible number of quality marks that people fabricate and put on their products. So in reality, there are very few. If you're looking for third-party certifiers, we have the 3 that we listed for certified for sport. And then for just product quality within the US, we have NSF International is doing the label claim testing, as well as USP. Other than that, there are no other accredited third-party organizations doing quality testing, auditing of dietary supplements within the United States. So if you don't see any of our marks on there, odds are that it's a bogus mark that somebody's putting on there to make it seem like they're doing something when they're actually not doing anything.
It's scary. So USP, is it still highly standardized? Is it well, run company?
Yeah. I mean, USP, while they're a competitor of ours, they're highly scientific, very knowledgeable people, and I have a lot of respect for the folks over there. So they do good work, to give them a little plug.
But they do not test for banned substances.
Correct. They have a very limited scope for what they're doing, and people who are interested really should go to usp.org or also look at nsf.org to see what we do. Or actually,
I was going to ask where people can find, even the
yeah,
list of the banned substances, right?
right. So for the Certified for Sport, the best source online is www.nsfsport.com.
Okay.
That's our Certified for Sport website. Um, I can't attest to having all the information that one would need when you're looking at it, but I can give out my email too. And if somebody has questions, this is what I love to do. I love to talk to consumers, love to talk to people and inform them about what's going on in the supplement industry and what we do here at NSF. So they could email me as well at travis@nsf.org. Feel free.
That's very generous of you, John, because
I hope I don't fill up my email box right away.
I was going to say, do not be surprised if after the video is posted that you get thousands of emails with requests. But I truly believe it's a healthy way of building relationships and encouraging people to actually consume the right products that are tested and qualified.
Exactly. So I've worked here, like I said, 22 years, and I love what I do. I love where I work. I mean, we're a public health. Our mission is to protect and improve public health. So, and I really take that to heart in what I do on a daily basis. So part of that is educating consumers and manufacturers and everyone within that touches a dietary supplement about the regulations and what you can do to ensure that you have a quality product that's going to be safe and effective for consumers.
So I think it's a, you know what, pretty good place to maybe finalize it and finish our great conversation and maybe allow people, because the video will be posted on the social media and a YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, Resync. So people will probably ask questions. So trust me, I will be forwarding the questions to you.
Very good.
Or you gave your email, so they might be emailing you. Get ready, John, for the amount of questions that may come your way. But I truly believe it was very informative, very honest of what people can expect when they go to, regardless if it's a Whole Foods, if it's GNC, if it's any nutritional sport, or even just a grocery store, that unless the product was certified by a third-party company, testing company, you have no guarantee and you have no, I would say, assurance that you're not putting your body into at some risk.
Exactly.
So
the best way is to look for a third-party certified product to ensure that a third party, someone who does not have an economic investment in the sale of that product, to assess whether it meets its label claim and whether it's a safe and quality product.
Agreed. So let's finish here and let's invite our listeners to ask any questions they may have, and that will guide us, John, for potentially another video, because if there are repetitive same questions, instead of you sending thousands of emails, let's just recoup and let's, you know what, maybe once a month we can find some new subject and maybe start posting it and educate people of why it matters to pay attention to what we were discussing.
Sounds fantastic.
Okay, well then I appreciate very much your time, assistance, and of course your information and knowledge that comes with that, John. I wish you a wonderful day, and everyone else that is listening, enjoy the rest of the day, whatever you are doing. Bring more joy and health into your life and consume only certified supplement products. And for more information, go to NSF website, which is, I believe, .com or .org. Remind me, please, John.
So nsf.org for our regular supplement, then nsfsport.com for the sports supplement.
Again, John, thank you so much. We will speak soon, and I hope everyone enjoyed as much as we did.
Very good. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, folks.
Thank you.